My name is Rick Iavani, and I lead People United's commercial banking team in Southern Connecticut. I also have the pleasure of serving on the CBIA Board of Directors. Peoples is a proud member of the CBIA and believes wholeheartedly in its mission of supporting and advocating for Connecticut's business community. Robust programming is part of that value proposition. So I'm excited to be here today with two of my colleagues to share ideas and insights that those listening can put right to work to help their businesses be more successful. But before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of Molly and Joe at the CBIA, as well as Andrea, Duncan, and Lauren at Peoples United for helping organize today's event. Needless to say, change and adaptation have been the norm for businesses over the past year, and that applies to us at Peoples as well. While the close of the transaction is a few months away and subject to conditions, the announcement of our merger with M&T Bank is exciting in that it brings two institutions with a history of serving customers and communities together. Our team remains steadfastly committed to serving Connecticut businesses now and into the future. As we worked with our customers over the past year to adapt their operations to the pandemic, and as we now focus on helping them return to work, either in person or virtually, one common concern raised is how to handle their payables and receivables more effectively, efficiently, and securely in a remote or distributed environment. Chris Sigovich and Sherry Stewart, both leaders in our treasury management practice, are with us today to talk more about the ways that you can evolve your business processes easily and painlessly to better manage payables and receivables. My team and I work daily with Sherry, Chris, and their teams to bring solutions to our client base. So with that, Sherry and Chris, it's all yours.
Thanks, Rick. I'll just take 2 seconds. My name is Sherry Stewart. I am the Regional Sales Manager for Connecticut and New York at Peoples United.
And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Sigovich. I lead our treasury management business at Peoples United. And while based just outside of Boston, born and raised in Connecticut, so great to be on with all of you.
I'm just going to take a minute and take you guys through our agenda for today. During our presentation, Chris and I are going to take you through an overview of the state of business payments. We're also going to provide you with some information on the threat of fraud as it has certainly increased during the pandemic. And we're going to give you some actionable tips that you can take back with you to automate your AR and AP, as well as increase your cash flow and mitigate fraud. At the end of our presentation, we're going to do a Q&A. So at any time during our presentation, if a question pops into your mind, please feel free to type that into your chat box, and we will certainly get to that for you. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who's going to take you through some statistics on the automation of AR and AP. Chris?
Sure, thanks, Sherry. So, AP and AR, I think, have been ripe for automation for some time now, and we're sharing some statistics on the screen with you that I think highlight this. Whether it be businesses saying that it takes too long to approve an invoice, or companies making plans to more permanently have employees work remotely or in a hybrid environment, or just general concerns about cash flow. I think these statistics from some recent industry studies hopefully ring true with all of you. And our goal today is to take some of these statistics and some of these topics and apply some real world sort of sharing of information, best practices and experiences that Sherry and I have gone through, not only over the last year, but over our careers with businesses in this space. So with that, I guess, Sherry, I'll start by asking you a question, sort of beyond these statistics, right? Which I think are helpful in some regard, but we hear a lot from business owners and decision makers on this topic, particularly over the last year since the pandemic hit. Maybe share, what you're hearing most from customers in regards to, automation around accounts receivable and their accounts payable functions.
Sure. Yes, both you and I have attended countless meetings over the last year as, everybody went into a little bit of a panic mode with the, oh my gosh, now what, point of view. And I have to say there is definitely a common theme, and definitely there was some common language that I heard no matter what meeting I attended, and you can probably say the same for yourself as well. Not almost every business owner that I met with said, I knew what I had to do. I knew that I needed to automate manual processes within my company, not just AR and AP, like across the board. They knew they needed to focus on automation, and they were gonna get to it because everybody's gonna get to it. But as always, something always pops up, and they always gave priority to, X, Y, or Z, to the something else. It's kind of like all of us as people. Everyone on this presentation today absolutely positively knows that we are supposed to exercise 3 to 5 days a week. And if we do it, we are going to be much healthier, much happier. We all know this to be true. And we're going to get to it, but something is always popping up, and we always choose to go out with our friends or go do this, that, or the other over the working out. But we are sincerely, truly going to get to it. And that was what I heard from all the business owners. I knew what I had to do. I was going to get to it, but I just didn't. And now this is where we found ourselves. Finally, they're like, okay, well, now I have to get to it, because unfortunately, it took a pandemic to slap us all upside of the head before we went, oh, you're saying I really need to get serious about automating my AP and AR, huh? And so now they're laser focused on it. So I would say that's probably the conversation that I had most recurring, that was most consistent, no matter what size the company or what the industry was.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So can you tell me, so from your perspective and with some of the meetings that you had, what are some examples of companies and the ways that companies have adapted to survive and thrive in this current environment?
Well, I think you'd agree. I would say that we've experienced as a banking partner to businesses a general sense of openness, right? That wasn't always there before, an openness to change, where customers are now actively seeking out our technology to make payments within their business, whether that's for payroll, whether that is to pay vendors, and how they receive money from their customers. And I think there's been, again, a new openness to expand the options in the technology in which they use to do these things. So I think that's number one. I think it's pushed organizations to think and act far more quickly than they did before, right? When we talk with businesses, it's generally about trying to understand the different pain points in their priorities. And oftentimes, right, the list of things that need to be accomplished are much longer. As you said, we're going to do it, or, we know we need to. The list of priorities are often longer than what you can get to. So business models have changed, right, as a result. And I think companies are becoming more nimble, embracing digital payments and electronic payments in a new way. I think we've long talked about the death of the paper check and potentially going cashless, for retail businesses in particular. And what we're consistently hearing from from customers, again, is just an openness to addressing these areas and the importance of addressing them to stay either competitive in the market amongst their peer competitors, or it's either demands from their employees. I'll give a couple interesting stats that I pulled in preparation for our conversation here. Over the last 12 months, we've seen a 67% year-over-year increase of logins to our mobile banking application by business customers. And what we see, and we attribute this to, is companies more regularly checking their accounts to see if a particular payment has come in, to see if a particular payment has gone out, a much closer eye being paid to cash flow, I think, than even before. And when we think about that, right, then we're thinking about, okay, so we've got these channels as a provider. What's next, right? What are our customers or what are businesses going to expect next from us? But I would say, sort of in summary, I would say the biggest thing that I've seen is just a new openness to change from the businesses that we work with.
How do you think businesses are, so let's hope and pray that the pandemic is near to its end, and we're going to be on the other side of it. Hopefully by the end of the year, we're going to be in a much better spot. How do you think businesses are preparing for the future as it relates to their treasury and finance functions?
Well, I don't think anyone entered 2020 expecting a pandemic, right? But I would say many of our customers and businesses were relatively well prepared in these areas of operating, paying suppliers and receiving money from their customers should there be an interruption. other organizations, right, as we know, were not as prepared. And so there was that sort of initial scramble to figure out, okay, how am I going to, operate? But since then, I think most have had the opportunity to step back, really evaluate these areas. Many have prioritized addressing with different technology solutions that we'll get into shortly. And thinking about, okay, how do I operate my business? I think, Rick, almost to your opening comment around building processes that don't just work in the office, but also work should I have employees both in the office and at home, or what if I need to send my employees back home remotely full time? I mean, I think we used to say to companies often, well, if you couldn't get into the office tomorrow, what would you do? And we all would generally have a laugh over it and say, well, that won't happen, right? I mean, we've gone through, different weather events like Katrina and other sort of more natural, weather, disaster type related things. But those, knock on wood, have generally been temporary. This has obviously been a much more elongated period. I guess a question I would then flip back to you are, what are the challenges, Sherry, and pain points you're seeing with companies trying to overcome this change, right? So I think most recognize the need that we've spoken to change. What are some of the sort of pain points and challenges that you see companies needing to overcome to get to that next level?
I'd say more often than not, it's letting go of how we used to do it. It's scary. You've done things a certain way always, and it's worked. And that old adage, hey, it's not broken, let's not fix it. And then all of a sudden it broke. And so now everybody's a little scared, and we just want to be comfortable. We want to go back to the way it was, but we can't, and we're not, because our world is forever changed by this. So I think it's a struggle for everyone at the company, and doesn't matter your level or your age or your job position at the company. It's very scary to wipe the table clean and go, okay, let's do everything we do differently. Let's think about how we do it. Let's explore all the options, and let's truly have an open mind, and let's move to the next step. And it's easy when you're in charge of everything and you're planning those. Step one, we'll do this. Step two, we'll do this, and you have a nice time horizon, a beautiful calendar planned out. But all of that kind of went up in smoke, and now everyone's like, no, we have to do it. We have to do it now, and we have to do it holistically, across the whole organization. So that much change at once, it creates some stress within the organization, and understandably so. So I would say that's the number one pain point that I've seen companies have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm hearing similar.
Yeah, from your perspective, what role do you think that we, People's United Bank, play as a solution provider in helping organizations think through, prioritize, and get their arms wrapped around the automation of AR and AP?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think more specifically, I think for some it's purely a financial decision, right? So we can help demonstrate a return on investment, right? So if today you're an organization that primarily sends paper checks as payments to your suppliers, and to your point, have been doing it that way for some time, it's a process that is certainly manual in nature, right? You all know who sign checks and have someone putting them in envelopes, stamping them, sending them out, and the whole reconciliation process on the back end. While you may only think of the cost of that stamp or the time that employee is investing in that function, there's so many other costs that are loaded into that we can help you identify and think about. And again, I think there's a whole financial aspect. The other side of it is, fraud mitigation. We'll talk more about fraud in a bit, but, paper checks and paper transactions in general, right, are fraught with fraud. For the simple fact that, think about this, every time you send someone a payment by check, your business name, your routing number, and your account number is on there. There's always been this interesting thing I think we've all felt as consumers or as business owners or decision makers that, I don't want to tell somebody my account number. That's a private piece of information, when in reality, if you send out 300 checks a month, it goes to everyone, right? And so having the right protections on your account, whether it's Positive Pay or whether it is having a process to validate, the amount that you wrote the check for is actually what it cleared for. So again, I think the first way is us helping you as a business or think about the financial benefits to looking at electronic payment solutions. There's also the fraud side, and really thinking about all the different costs. One of the exercises that we do and can do with businesses is literally walking through step by step of the payments process. And in that sort of discussion, there's a lot of things that come out, right? It's often that we work with organizations that any check over a certain dollar amount needs to be signed by a second person.
Right.
People travel, people are on vacation, people are in important meetings with customers, and so oftentimes things are delayed as a result. So I think it's really our role to help you uncover all the different areas to think about. Also see the benefit of some of the more forward-thinking solutions that are generally electronic that may be of benefit to your business. That's really the role that I see. And then I would say on the accounts receivable side, which I think is often, I don't want to say ignored, but less in focus sometimes for solution providers like ourselves, is collecting money from customers. If you're a distributor, right, and oftentimes you're delivering product to a customer, a driver may pick up that check. Well, again, pandemic hits, that interaction, right, may not happen as frequently, or maybe you don't want it to happen. So providing your customers options, whether to receive payments online or pay you in alternative ways and have different mechanisms set up rather than just, receiving a check handed to you or having it mailed to your office. And I'll never forget having a conversation with a customer early last April, who said, right now there's probably 100 checks sitting in my office. I need to get somebody in there, to be able to deposit those. Is one of your branches open, or is there another way you can help me? So again, I think it's just really thinking through all of these different processes and all the different hard and soft costs that, you may not think about. It looks like we have a question that just came in, so let me read it.
All right, get it.
So it says, in your work with people's clients, do you see teams focused more on automating AP or AR once the pandemic hit? You want to take that one?
Sure. I would actually say there's two answers to it. So I'll give you my first answer. So if as a company you had begun to think about automation and you had, had the internal conversations and you had picked, because generally you're gonna kind of pick a path. Am I gonna focus on AR or am I gonna focus on AP first? So you had picked your path and you had already kind of started down that path. So for those organizations, I found that they immediately needed to look at the other path because they had some awareness here. They were already starting down that road. And they're like, oh my gosh, I was doing my AP, but now I did nothing for AR. Please help me get that, started and get myself on board with that. So if you were already on a path, you quickly pivot and kind of bring the other direction up so that at least you were kind of on par within the AP and AR. Now, if you were a company that had done nothing, so you were in the I'm gonna category, so you were gonna exercise 3 to 5 days a week, but you didn't just yet. So I find for those clients, they chose AR because at the end of the day, you've got to get money in the door. As a company, if you cannot get your collections and get your money in the door at the bank, it's all for nothing. So I find that if they were starting from scratch, they wanted us to focus our conversations and the products and services that we have that can assist them in an AR world.
Yeah.
So tell me, how do you think that we can or have helped our customers who now, depending on, okay, are you in a hybrid environment? So you've got half your employees working at home, you've got half of them at the office. Is everybody remote, or are all of your employees back in the actual office environment? So given those 3 scenarios, and if you have examples, that'd be great too. Tell us how you think we've helped clients kind of navigate each of those worlds.
It's a good question. I think it goes back to something I think I said a bit earlier, which is building processes that either work in all of those environments or at least have something that can work in all of those environments. Mm-hmm. So let's stick with the accounts receivable side for 1 second. So in a situation, we recently helped a customer whose staff was entirely working from home, and they have now since had some start to go back in the office periodically. Historically, they had asked their customers to pay them, 30 days, within 30 days of receipt of invoice, their primary office address was on there as to where to send a check to. And so those checks were coming into the office. And in the beginning, they would send an employee in, get those checks. They happened to have a remote deposit scanner. They brought that home. We were able to help them get them set up from home to do that. But it still required an employee to go into the office. It still caused a day or two lag in picking up those checks and getting them deposited. So we worked with the particular customer that I'm thinking of to help them accept payments online. We were able to help them add a link to their website, and on their invoices going forward, they directed their customers to pay them or encourage them, right, to pay them online. It's a relatively easy change for your customer. In fact, I think most welcome it. So I think it's business friendly in that sense. The benefit to our customer was that they no longer had to send that employee in as often, right? They still receive checks that they have not gone away entirely, right? That's a difficult transition to make. But they were sending them in less often. And also they were receiving money more quickly, right? The funds were coming in electronically, posting to their account with some remittance information. So, obviously we would love to be able to help every customer in our portfolio be able to do that. Again, some, it's not as big of a challenge, so it's not as big of a priority. Others, it takes time to work through that change process. But I would, ask the audience if there was an open line to think about, have you done that? Have you explored the option of receiving payments online? And again, you may think, okay, is there a cost to that? The answer is, in some cases, yes. But again, what our role is, right, as a solution provider is to help you think through what's the ROI on that, right? What are the benefits that could outweigh the actual costs? What are the soft costs that you may not have thought about? So, Sherry, that's just one recent example of how we've helped, a customer. And, there's obviously countless others, but that's one that really comes to mind.
How do you think companies can work with us or their bank? And of course, we truly hope it's us. If it's not us, please comment at the end of the presentation. I'm going to help you correct that. But how do you think companies can work with us or their bank to become more technologically focused on their AR and AP? Because that's not an area that you would necessarily in the past equate technology with my AR or technology with my AP. So how do we get everybody to that spot?
Well, I think you and I and our teams have a passion for it, right? So let us go on the journey with you. Let us share the learnings and best practices that we have from other businesses, and let us bring, that example that I just shared to your business. We love nothing more, right, than building those relationships and getting to truly understand the inner workings of a business. The more that we're able to learn, or the more that you're able to share whichever partner that you work with, more transparently about the challenges you have, the resources that you may or may not have to deal with a particular issue. We or your partner, right, can become an advocate and a true partner to you in that sense. The other thing I would say is a lot of us have technology that is probably in our business. We certainly do at the bank. I'm assuming that most of you do in your companies, that you have in your organization that you may not be fully leveraging. So whether that is, capabilities within your ERP system, it could be capabilities that are available through your bank's online banking. It could be in a piece of software or a service that you subscribe to that, when you implemented it, you had a particular intention for it, and maybe it didn't get utilized fully. I know one of the exercises that we've done here is looking at, again, all of the technology that we have and determining, do we fully leverage it? Are there more possibilities for us to do with something? Oftentimes, right, the solution is staring right at us. And we may already have it, we're just not leveraging it. So that's another role, I think, that we can play in helping companies become more technology focused in this area. You may already have the technology. You just may not be leveraging it.
That treadmill is sitting right beside you. You just need to get on it.
That's exactly it. Yeah. We have another question coming in. The question is, how do you see payment flows evolving as a result of COVID and the shift to working remotely?
Okay. I think we are finally going to let go of our trusty friend, the check, The check is like our childhood blankie. We love that thing. We cannot let go of it. It provides comfort to us. We cuddle it, we snuggle it, we pet it. We get panicky if it's not nearby. We're going off to college. We know we shouldn't bring the blankie, but we're folding it up and putting it in the suitcase with us. I think we are finally going to let go of it. I think we understand that the time has passed, as it hopefully does for our blankies. The time has passed for the check, and we just need to let go of that as a payment method, and we need to redirect ourselves toward anything that we can do in an automated fashion, whether it's converting over to credit card payments, making sure your portal is set up for your company so that as your customer, if I want to pay you, all I have to do is log into your website and boom, there's my invoice. Here's what I need to do. Click a button and that payment's going to come right next to you because A, it helps you. It's electronic coming to you. B, it helps me because I don't have to go find an envelope, find a check, print it out, put it in the mailbox and actually send it to you. I'm just going to click a button and I can get it right to you. So I think finally we are going to see the death of the check, and we're really going to truly focus on getting everything automated so that no matter what we wake up to, on a Sunday, Tuesday afternoon, we're going to be fine. Like we're going to be able to quickly pivot and redirect our organization in the way that we need to without missing a beat. We won't have to live through these trying times again.
Sure.
I have another question coming in, so I'm going to toss this one to you. Okay. This is a good one. I've seen this one a lot. I'm sure you have had this question tons of times. So it says, I've been trying to get my boss to buy into automating our AP payments, but it has been tough to quantify our cost per payment and prove that we can save money. Do other companies struggle with this, and what other benefits should I be highlighting? That's not a new question, huh?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say, it's a good question. I wouldn't say that all organizations struggle in this area, but I would say most or many do, right? And it comes back to what role you hold in your organization and what your priority is, right? If you are, responsible for, driving profitability, driving efficiency, reducing fraud in your organization, right? You have different motivations than someone who may be just responsible for carrying out, certain tasks. I think going back to a point that we might have made earlier, we can, and whichever, service provider you work with, we certainly do. And again, likely your current service provider, if not us, has the ability to help you think through and quantify, right? That ROI that we talked about earlier on identifying what are the true costs of the payment process that you have today, from the paper to the signature process to the workflow. We had, and I'm sure we still have many, organizations who utilize FedEx, right, to FedEx checks from an office to a signer's home, then back to the office to be stuffed and mailed, and then back out. You may not think of those costs, right? Both in terms of, I think the easy identifiable ones is the FedEx cost. The less identifiable ones is the time lag. Did you miss a discount? Are you taking advantage of discounts the way you could be? So I think the answer is yes. I think most organizations struggle with that. And I think the good news is, though, our role, right, that we can provide to businesses is being consultative, helping you understand all those costs, and trying to quantify it to put together your business case to the extent you need to for your organization.
Agreed.
We have one that came in just now as well that I'm happy to take. It says, what about services like Zelle? Can this be used for businesses? So I think that's a great question. So for those who have kept up and followed a lot of what is going on in the payment space, it is truly transformative. If you think about, take the Uber example, we used to hail cabs, right? And you had to think about, for a long time, do I have cash on me? And then the credit card was introduced. And now riding in an Uber or Lyft is not about you thinking, are you going to make a payment or not? It's just truly an experience. It's a thing you do and the payment's made and you never think twice about it. So I think the same thing is going on in transforming in the business payments world, right? We're seeing same-day ACH, right? There was previously a limit of 25,000, now moving to 100,000. We see the clearinghouse transforming their real-time payment efforts, and many banks on that platform. We also
They increased their window a couple of weeks ago. So now those.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, windows were increased. Yep. Yeah, so windows are increasing. That's a great point. We're also seeing the Fed, right? They've announced a program called Fed Now, where they are bringing online in the coming years a real-time payments capability that will work in parallel to some of what the clearinghouse is doing. To answer your question specifically, Zelle, I think many of us use as a consumer, right? You can transfer funds. We haven't seen broad adoption of Zelle in the business payment space yet. I think there's a lot of use cases, particularly in insurance payments of, making claims payments and interest in use cases there. Haven't seen broad adoption of Zelle being used for business payments yet, but I think if not Zelle and that payment type evolving, you're going to see a lot more in the same day ACH arena, in the real-time payment space, whether it be from the clearinghouse or FedNow. And again, our role, right, and the role of your current bank, if not us, is to be having these conversations with you and educating you on kind of what's to come and how it may fit for your business. I don't see any other questions in the chat right now. So Sherry, I'll shift one back to you, and then we'll kind of shift to fraud a bit more. What's something that maybe surprised you? And I know we're all looking for sort of silver linings or positive outcomes from the pandemic. Is there one or two that you can think of in relation to this topic?
Yeah, definitely. I think what surprised me was how much deeper we actually connected with one another. Although it didn't seem so at first. It was definitely not apparent in the beginning, because in the beginning, we were literally like torn apart from one another. We wake up, we go to work every day, and all day long, there's people around us, there's noise, there's sounds, there's meetings, there's laughter, there's talking, there's, eating, all of these things. And then we woke up one morning and it was all gone, and there was just like silence and no one around us. And so, for a minute we panicked because we're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Where are my people? Where are my humans? And then we started to evolve, and when we started to connect differently, as we had meetings, we would see people at home and they're in their dining room today and in their kitchen tomorrow, because if you weren't someone who actually worked from home, you didn't have your spot because nobody cared. You didn't need a spot. Your spot was at work. So when everybody had to go through finding their spot, there were people I had meetings with that it took like months. They were in a different spot every single day until they're like, okay, this is going to be it. And then people would like find their spot, and you would talk about, oh, I like that room. It looks good. And oh, look, you painted on the walls. You found a new picture. We didn't have those conversations in the past. We became part of people's real lives, their day-to-day actual lives, not just a work microcosm. On Friday, it was late in the day, I was on a call with a CFO of a really large company. We were deep into our very important conversation. And in marched his 5-year-old daughter. Without pause, she came to explain to him that she was going to be borrowing her mother's high heels because she was going to play dress up, and she'd like to know when he would be joining her. I start laughing. He starts profusely apologizing, and I'm like, no, stop, it's fine. And I knew that day when we hung the phone up, within half an hour, he was going to have like red fingernail polish on his nails, probably some lipstick on, and maybe a dress too, because he was going to go play dress up with his 5-year-old daughter. And I left that call connecting with him in a way that I could have never connected with him had we been sitting in some nondescript old conference room. So we've connected differently, but we've connected deeper, and I think on a much more real and a much more, not to use an overused word, but a much more authentic way. So that was kind of a surprise that came out of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we have connected with one another at work, and I think with customers, as well, because there are those kind of human interactions, those things that happen that were before when we saw customers in their office, right? We were in work mode. And then you never really thought about people's after work mode. You're absolutely right. So I would agree with you on that.
And the dog never barks when it's quiet. The dog only barks when you're in the middle of a very important meeting. They like save it up and then they go crazy. How many meetings have you been on where everybody's dog is barking and you're like, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. The dog won't shut up. He saw a squirrel.
Yeah. So we've got a couple other questions that came in. Let's see if we can try to get to them. So question is, Chris spoke of a remote deposit system a customer set up at home to be able to deposit checks. We receive less than 15 checks a month and sometimes only a couple. Is there a way to deposit them without writing a deposit slip and going to the bank? Sherry, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. And with the quantity that small, you actually have two really good choices. You can do a mobile remote deposit. So that just simply means the use of your iPad, your iPhone, your Android, whatever device you've got handy. Because that requires you to take your picture, much like you're used to as a consumer. So that would certainly be an option for a business that has a small number of checks. Alternatively, you could use the remote deposit capture machine. And again, you're not preparing deposit tickets because the system does everything for you. It will virtually endorse the back of your check as it scans it. It creates the deposit ticket at the end. It allows you to do your system of checks and balances and, check your totals, make sure that, hey, the 3 checks that you got for $100 do equal $300. And then you click the submit button. For us, our window is 6:30. So you have until 6:30 at night to get those checks scanned at your home at your leisure, and they're going to be deposited just as if you actually got in your car, drove to the branch, and actually made that physical deposit. So either of those options would be great options for you, given that volume.
Yeah, and I would particularly highlight the mobile option that I think you started with for that volume, 15 checks and sometimes only a couple. I would agree with that. There's another question that came in right before that. So working backwards, which practice is best to prevent ACH fraud, and what protection do we have as consumers to Peoples? So we're actually shifting right into the fraud section. So thank you for helping us transition. We can take that one and then we'll shift in. So in terms of best practice to prevent ACH fraud, we have and other banks have a service called Ach Positive Pay that you can enable on your account or accounts that will prevent someone else from coming in and debiting your account, right? So think about in your personal life, you've got a mortgage payment, maybe it's a gym membership, et cetera. And in your consumer life, those generally happen, right? And you're reactive to that. And you're generally forced to call and dispute, or maybe perhaps through the mobile app, dispute a transaction if you didn't authorize it. On the business side, we can put in place what's called ACH Positive Pay. This will allow you to review the transaction and approve it, thus allowing it to go through or declining it. And therefore, the ACH will not hit your account. I candidly, I am not as up to speed on our consumer products and protections. So I don't know that I can comment beyond what I just said around business accounts. I don't know, Sherry, if you'd add anything on the consumer front. If not, perhaps we can follow up with the individual who asked that question and connect them with the right person here at the bank, or help you track down more information.
And I will certainly admit to my lack of education in the consumer world. We focus our efforts in the commercial world, so we're completely uneducated on the consumer side of the bank. But another option that I'll throw out there to protect yourself from fraud is the utilization of UPIC. So UPIC stands for Universal Product Identification Code. And so what that does is it allows your bank to give you a virtual or a pretend, think of it as a pretend ABA and account number. And so for everybody who wants to do ACH payments to you, you hand them this pretend number because it means nothing. It's not connected. It doesn't matter. You can post it on the bathroom wall if you want to. And it travels with you. So as you change banks, as you grow, as you move, that UPIC code actually goes with you wherever you go. And so then you don't have to actually disclose your actual ABA and account number. You can just hand out this pretend one all day long. And so it protects your account information, because the fewer hands that you leave your account information in, the safer you're going to be at the end of the day. So that'd be another great tool to use.
Yeah, that's a good one. We've got one more coming in. So the question is, and I'm happy to take, and Sherry, jump in. You mentioned a service where the customer clicks a link to pay an invoice, does the customer get into a portal where they see their invoices? Is that portal at the bank or set up on our end? That's a great question. So we have the ability, I think, as we talked about a little bit earlier, to help customers receive payments online. And I would think of it in terms of good, better, and best. We have a couple of different solution sizes, if you will, and sophistications. Everything is handled by the bank. And when I say that, I'm trying to answer the portion of your question of, is that set up at the bank or is it on your end? It's with us. We are the solution provider. So you're not buying a piece of software or installing anything locally. We can make it as simple as providing a link for customers to make a credit card or an e-check or ACH payment. And we could make it as sophisticated and as elaborate as, setting up a website that is branded with your colors, that looks like just like your company, that allows your customers to log into the portal, look at prior invoices, select the ones that they want to pay. So again, really, I would think of it in terms of good, better, best. There's sort of the simple all the way to the more sophisticated. Again, it's just a matter of us or your solution provider working with you to understand, what your goals and objectives are, what your needs. The other thing I would say attached to this as well is we can also help facilitate the delivery of a bill or an invoice electronically to your customer. So if your practice includes sending a paper invoice, waiting for a paper check, we can also help you try to convert the front end of this by sending electronic invoices to which your customer can, engage with and make payment on. So I hope that helps.
Okay. I'm gonna just transition us over into fraud, since we were talking about the ACH fraud and that kind of thing. But please, if you have questions, feel free to keep lobbing them into us. We're happy to take them. And what is a presentation without trying to scare you with some statistics on fraud, right? So here are just a few facts and figures for you. 81% of businesses, regardless of the type of industry, have been targets for payment fraud. 75 of them have been victims of BEC, or business email compromise. That's when you get an email from the CFO that says, hey, do a wire, except it didn't come from the CFO, it came from the fraudster. 74% of victims have been 74% have been victims of check fraud. And 77% find that since they started working remotely, it's harder to kind of get their arms around this. It's harder to investigate it, and it's harder to prevent check fraud because they just hadn't thought of the processes that needed to be in place to secure their company from fraud. So Chris, all right, there's been a lot in the news about this topic, obviously, because the pandemic has led to some creative fraudsters out there. So with all the news that's out there, and unfortunately, we've seen our share of customers who've, fallen victim to this. Can you talk about like some categories? Like, do you see things fall into specific categories? And generally, kind of like, where are we in the fraud world, and where can people focus their time and energy and just kind of get their arms around, okay, these are the types of fraud that are out there and that are more prevalent now?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So I think, most of us, are pretty familiar and spent time talking about, or unfortunately experiencing some of these, what we termed here on the slide as more traditional forms of fraud, whether it's, counterfeit checks or scams related to checks and things like that, where someone gets a copy or your actual check and they wash, the amount, they create new ones and they're sending them out, out of your account without you knowing. Obviously, if you have Positive Pay, which checks and verifies what you've sent to what has come in for clearing, that can help prevent that. But I think what we're seeing more of now, and when I say more of, that doesn't mean that check fraud has stopped, but a lot of shift towards cyber fraud in nature. Sherry, you mentioned business email compromise, or that scheme where someone is often impersonating someone at your business, asking you to do something, often as a rush, right? Often related to payroll, and they're impersonating a member of your organization with an email that is not really from your, from your business. Obviously, there are things that we hear all the time, right, about data breaches, right? And we hear about the big ones. We hear about the big, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, data breaches that are generally consumer in nature. what we don't hear about, right, are data breaches and ransomware and phishing attacks on small businesses, on mid-sized businesses, right? Because those aren't newsworthy. But I think during this time, right, we have seen an uptick in fraud attempts. People are distracted, right? We talked before about the different working environments. Before it was very easy to walk down the hallway. Sherry, you sent me an email that I thought maybe looked a little suspicious or was a little out of the ordinary. I walked down the hallway. Sherry, hey, did you ask me to send that 15,000? Are you sure that makes sense? And now you and I have been working remotely for a year, and I'm distracted. You gave an example of a kid walking in. I have two young ones myself, right? They've made many appearances. And you're multitasking, and I look at it and I say, oh, that's right, I've got to get that payment out, and I do it. And I think we've seen the sophistication of it continue to grow, right? But because it works, right? We if you were to talk to our financial crimes and our fraud team, they would tell you they're as busy as ever. So, I guess it really, fraud attempts, right, will not stop.
No.
The tools that are available are there to help protect you and prevent you. And I think a big, part of it is how you respond to it or how you react to it. We could talk a little bit about that in a few minutes as well. But these are kind of the four kind of categories that we are seeing the most fraud in, whether it actually occurs or just the attempt itself right now. Sherry, maybe on the heels of that, talk about some easy or quick things a company can do to protect against fraud. We just talked about Ach Positive Pay a little bit in UPIC, which is kind of fronting that account number or using an alternative number. Maybe just talk about some of the things that companies can do quickly to reduce their exposure to fraud that we maybe haven't touched on.
Yeah. So here's one that might strike a chord. Companies need to let go of the concept that John's my guy. He does the AR. I trust him. I know he'll always do it right. He does the whole thing. And Susie, she's my AP person. Like, I know she's going to get it done, because that's the mindset that we came from. We would have those trusted individuals, and we handed everything over to them on a silver platter and said, hey, I trust you to do this. I know that you're going to get it done. I'll never have to worry about it. And they do, but you're giving one person the entire process, beginning, middle to end. If I'm going to hack your company and you've given all the authority to one person, all I've got to do is crack that one person and I'm good to go. So I would suggest adding layers to your processes, add people in there. Find people that you trust and use your online banking security portal to actually tier out people's security ability, because you don't have to choose 3 people who give give the farm to all 3 people. You can layer out their security. So have people that enter the data, have another set of people who check and verify the data, have another set of people who approve the data. Because if I'm going to hack into your company and all of a sudden you've added layers in order to get a payment out the door, as a fraudster, I have to somehow penetrate every one of your layers to get that payment out. Think of how much harder that is to do if I have to go through John, Susie, and Joe to get a payment out. I've got to hack through 3 different people. I've got to trick 3 people, 3 people's logins, 3 people's IDs, 3 people's passwords, and 3 people's processes to actually get that payment out the door. Versus if you just give everything to John and he does everything to get to the end, all I do is get through John and I'm good to go. John could be having a bad day today until, like you said, Chris, you get distracted and you're like, oh my gosh, let me get that payment out, click the button. There was no intent, of course, on the part of John, but we just all want to get our work done, and we often work quickly. And when we work quickly, we forget things. So if you just add in some layers to your processes, reach out to your bank, have that conversation about security, let them walk you through all your different options. I know here at People's United, our online banking portal is just infinite in its options for tiering out security. We can, tier it to the specific payment type, whether you can do an ACH and the type of ACH you can do, and what dollar amount that you can do, and how many ACHs you can do, and what the maximum you can do in a given day. So every bank is going to have a lot of security options available to you. And I find that companies don't necessarily take full advantage of them. And it's so quick, it's so easy, it's the simplest thing on earth that you can do to add several layers of protection and kind of several like force fields across your company that a fraudster has got to get through in order to actually get that payment out the door. Now, having said that, let's say unfortunately, the day did come and you find that your company was compromised or was hacked. So Chris, what should they do?
Well, I would first start by obviously trying to understand what's happened, right? So if it is a fraudulent transaction, right, that you've identified, or you believe a fraudulent transaction that you've identified on your account, your first call or outreach should be to your bank, who will undoubtedly involve their fraud, operations area, potentially the financial crimes team, to help you investigate that. If it falls into one of those other categories, if it's a business email compromise scheme, right, something that's happened within your company, communicate, pick up the phone, and immediately contact the individual who, you thought was asking you to do something. Or if you believe that your system or screen is being hacked, stop. Don't continue, with the action that you're doing until you've involved either your in-house IT individual or the third party that may support your company from an IT perspective. I think oftentimes we will see something that looks wrong, right? My screen has been, socially engineered, and I think something's wrong, but I then think to myself, well, that's probably not. I'll just continue. If you suspect that something's wrong, take the time to stop and contact the individual within your organization or third-party partner that helps you, solve those things. I will say that we aren't maybe as technologically savvy as we thought. There were some other questions coming in to the Q&A instead of the chat that I may have missed. So let me just read through these. I know we're bumping up on the hour. Let's see. So there's one here that I think we've talked a lot around, but one of the questions is, what are the actual services you are offering for AP and AR? So I'll take a first stab at that. I think that is a great question. Broadly, right, we can help companies make payments, whether it's for payroll or to vendors or for, claims payments, whatever outgoing money you need to make, whether it's by check, ACH, wire, virtual card, on a commercial card, or, something that you've maybe historically considered as just using for travel. All of those different payment types that are available to businesses we offer. And again, it's our role to help you understand which ones should you take advantage of, right? There's been a huge shift to using a virtual card from a working capital, from potentially a rebate and a fraud mitigation perspective, or online or electronic payments in general. We could share probably endless statistics on sort of a slow but steady decline in the number of checks being written and the steady and consistent rise of electronic payments. On the accounts receivable front, again, we talked a lot about being able to accept payments online. But when you think about all the different options, there's some we didn't talk about, right? For many customers, we host a lockbox, right, where customers are able to have payments sent centrally. Most of these customers were not impacted negatively during the pandemic, right? Our processing centers remained open.
Yeah, they sure did, and we did not miss a beat on that side. And we actually got some calls from customers who went, "I've never been so grateful to have you and to have the lockbox, because I didn't have to think about what am I going to do when those checks show up in the mail, and I have no one at the office to process them." So it's a great tool to take advantage of.
Yeah. Let me jump to another one. So it says, your answers seem to be directed towards larger business. As a small manufacturer, we don't have a portal or website that links to a portal. Is there a similar approach for small companies to automate AP payments? The answer is yes. I mean, most times, right, in the direction that our solutions are going and have gone is integrating with your ERP system. So we have accounts payable solutions that integrate with QuickBooks.
ERP is just a fancy word for just your accounting system. That's all that means.
Just your accounting system. Thank you. Yeah, I got caught up in acronym world there. But a lot of our solutions integrate with your accounting software. So whether that is QuickBooks or Sage or NetSuite or Microsoft GP. So most of what we've talked about, or I would almost say all of what we've talked about, doesn't require you to have a sophisticated website or a portal. All the services, whether they are accounts payable or accounts receivable in nature, are services that we offer that don't require you to install software, that don't require you to run anything on your end. So whether you're a small business, a medium-sized business, or a large business, everything we've talked about is available to the whole spectrum of customers. Part of the work is obviously trying to identify what's the right solution for your company based on your size and payment volumes. Let me see if there's any others that we haven't gotten to.
Okay.
One of them is most of our Ps cannot accept anything but a check. How do we get around that? Do we ask for bank info?
Yeah,
Sarah,
it's not exactly true that they can't accept anything other than a check. If they have an account in the United States, chances are they can most certainly accept a wire. They can most certainly accept an ACH. In some or many cases, they can accept a credit card. But most definitely, that company is taking your check and depositing it somewhere. And wherever they're depositing it, I bet there's an ABN account number for that account. So they can absolutely take ACH. I think a lot of companies just assume that the customer only takes checks and they don't actually have that conversation. So you want to have that conversation with your vendors and say, and explain to them, because this is not going to come as a newsflash, we are automating our internal processes. We are automating our AP and AR as one of the components of that. We are looking to not issue checks any longer. Could you please provide your ABN account number so that we may begin to pay you through ACH? So you just have to initiate that conversation, but they absolutely can take an ACH. Oh, Chris, we can't hear you. You went on mute or something. What happened?
Oh, we had done so well with being off mute.
I know, we were so close.
So recognizing that we're right up against the hour, I'm going to wrap up our conversation here today. I put up on the screen, and we will share this information with all of the attendees today in a follow-up email, just a simple summary of some of the tips that we have around AP, AR, and protecting your business in general. So we will send this out as a follow-up, so no need to take a screenshot or memorize anything. We hope that we provided some value to all of you on the line today and appreciate all of the questions. So thank you for that, Sherry. It was fun to have a nice little chat with you. And appreciate everyone's time today. Molly, should we turn it back to you, or let me know how we wrap up today's call?
You guys are all set. We can just hop off now. We will be sending a thank you email and a copy of the recording of the video. So we're all set.